everybody. So nice to see you all. Thank you for joining us on this sunny, warm, seasonally warm November Friday. We're really excited today to share information on authentic assessment, and we're going to do some great work on that. But before we get started, I think we might want to hear from members if there's any updates, right? Or did you already do this, Sean?
No.
And I think we want to, is someone willing? I think I want to pass it to Dave Blanchard, who's also going to share some information as well. So I'll just open it up to anyone who might have an update to share.
Yeah, I can go ahead and get us kicked off with an exciting thing and then a humanizing thing. An exciting thing. District 742 is going to be hosting an amazing event on Friday, December 5th. Look for more information around that. It's going to be something where you'll see some MNGAIA members out and about somewhere at Tech High School, I'm sure. But that is a great opportunity if you've never been to St. Cloud and want to join other teachers, K-12 teachers, for an amazing, and some higher ed people, I'm sure, an amazing part of a day. I think it's most of the day. Do it. Make the drive. Come up. I drive an hour up here almost every day. It's not that bad, I promise. It's a really, really nice drive. And we might have snow, or we might have beautiful leaves blowing across the highway as you drive up. So that is one very exciting opportunity that I think is a great one to start with. The second is just a public service announcement, and really opportunity for us to all take a moment and just remember that we are humans doing this work. This week, we had the passing of a great, influential Minnesota ed tech, Mary Messicomer. Mary passed earlier this week. Mary touched many of us in all of the ways that someone can bring joy and laughter through a ties giveaway and bring like 3 seconds before I was supposed to present with a system team, and I did the Minnesota thing and took all my feelings and shoved them in a bottle and shoved them way down, and then I connected with the people in the system meeting that also knew Mary, because Mary is and always is an amazing spirit in Minnesota, an influential leader within educational technology, library and literacy, and all the really amazing things that you could ever want. So yeah, thank you.
Just a reminder that we record this and the chat history is shared. And so there's a few different efforts to make sure that Mary's family, I'm getting a little choked up now, Mary's family is aware of how special she was to all of us. So if you want to put anything in the chat, that will be, we'll package that up and make sure she gets it. She was absolutely someone that I looked up to and aspired to reach at least some degree of her kindness and openness that she shared with everybody. A wonderful woman, a real sad loss for the state. Just leaving the moment for people to sit with Mary's picture, and then we'll move on. Amber, that's awesome. Yes, absolutely. Mentor. Yeah, Jen just shared there's a public Facebook group. So if you have Facebook, you can join the public memory Facebook group for Mary as well. When I think about Mary, I think Minnesota had Oregon Trail and Mary Messicomer. And those are probably the two greatest things that I've experienced in my time in this state. So, all right.
Great. Well, thank you, Dave, for that, and Sean. And and I appreciate you, mentioning the December 5th thing. I am going to be sharing out with everyone on an email after today's meeting some more details about the St. Cloud. It's really our e-learning day, and so we will have our practitioners in sessions doing some professional learning, but they will also be attending to their kids. So it's a lot for them, and at the same time, we'll be bringing in community folks and students to do a Changemaker Hub. So, and that Changemaker Hub is going to be focused on AI and assessment and the school experience and what teachers should teach and students should learn in a world that's going to be inherently powered by AI and almost everything we do. So we'll send information on that after today's meeting for anyone who's interested. And we'll also include a sign up. So if you do want to come, I want to know who you are because we want to give you a special badge on that day. So thanks, Dave. Thanks, Sean, for kicking us off. Today, I'm super excited to talk with you about AI and assessment and our just whole process of just dipping into this area of authentic assessment. And so there's some questions that are on the slide around learner diversity and flattening diversity. And I just want to explain a little bit of what that is. So as you think about these questions, when we talk about learner diversity, what we're really talking about are the ways that students differ in how they think, learn, and experience the world, right? Differences in background, language, culture, ability, motivation, interests, and even their cognitive style, right? And we know as educators that good education does recognize and adapt to these differences rather than forcing everyone into the same mold. And yet we struggle in our systems to make that a reality. And then when we talk about flattening diversity, what we mean by that is that tends to happen, I should say, when technology or teaching, when we in our practice treat people as just uniform individuals. So when we think of an AI grading system, and it assumes that there's only one right way to do the essay, for example, one correct way to solve a problem, it can reinforce bias. It can reward conformity and compliance. And it also ignores creativity and oftentimes the culturally different ways of knowing and the funds of knowledge that our kids bring with them. So in the chat, 2 to 3 words describing how our current assessments succeed or fail to reflect authentic learning. And I know this is really a deep question. And for those of you who are not in the classroom as practitioners, any of your thoughts around assessment are welcome. But we'll give it a couple minutes to just let you think on these questions and share in the chat. 2 to 3 words. Yeah. Computerized, not in practice, disconnected. Death by multiple choice. Yeah. These are all great. So we will continue to capture these things. I know this is a lot to think about. We're asking people to ponder a really heavy topic this morning. And again, we're just getting into the beginning. A little bit of what has motivated me personally to want to delve into this topic. And I will share 2 keynote presentations that were shared with me from the recent AI and Measurement and Education Conference. The learning that we did there with people who have been in this work and really steeped in standardized testing was pretty mind-blowing. And so the idea of personalized assessment, I think, is within reach. And so it has just motivated me to, as the person who wears the REA hat in my district, to feel a little bit of pressure to get going and get the conversation started. Well, that's what this is today, is we are just going to get going and get this conversation started. It may not be perfect. I will tell you, I am not all-knowing. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to make suggestions perhaps that people will disagree with, and maybe I will end up disagreeing with it down the line. But I want to make sure everyone knows we're in a space where it is okay for us to be a little vulnerable, admit we don't know what we don't know, and learn together, because this is the way that we are going to lift this profession and take it back in the sense that we need to, because without public education, we're going to be in a hard spot. Everybody knows that. We don't want that. And one way that we can do it is through really tackling assessment. So here we go. You want to go to the next?
Yeah, let's
slide?
do it.
All right.
Can I just skip? Should I go?
Yeah.
All right, so it is a real treat and honor for me to get to introduce our Practitioner Spotlight for today. Ms. Jen Ivers is a language arts teacher, first and foremost, at Orono High School, and she's also, I'm reading here, an instructional development facilitator. I have had the great opportunity of working with Jen for the last few years. She is doing the absolute right work in this, and so I am just super excited to have this opportunity to share. And Jen, if you want to take over screen sharing, or let me know if that works, I'll all set to help out.
All right. Okay. Well, good morning. I'm just going to present this quickly and get started. All right. So I'm Jen Ivers. Thank you, Sean, for having me today. I would say that my hesitation with sharing is just that, like, I'm just a teacher. I don't have a background in technology. But I love to learn. And I love to learn in front of my students and with my students. And so my hope today is to share a couple ways we have addressed authentic assessment in the age of AI. Everything I'm going to show you is a team lift and effort. It is not done by just me. And I would say too, like, I'm still learning. So if as you hear about what we're doing and you have ideas, I would love to learn from you. So please feel free to chime in or to offer ideas and suggestions, because we would love to continue this work and making it meaningful for students. So in the first 2 periods of my day, I teach reading intervention for our high schoolers. It's a very small group. We meet in my office, and then I race upstairs to teach one class of English 9. And those 2 periods are the very best part of my day. And then in the second part of my day, I support teachers in their PLCs. I support our administration. I work with some of our MTSS processes and collaborate with other specialists in our district. So this is my classroom. And I want to talk to you today first about an assessment that we just reimagined. And then we'll share a little bit about some creative problem solving with AI. But the first is what we call the writer's room. And what I want to share is that this was first a coming of age literature unit. So students were reading short stories that are coming of age. They are looking to identify traits of a coming of age text. Kind of what does it mean to write a story that is coming of age? What are the elements we can expect? And like any good PLC, we start with our standards and we ask, like, well, what do they have to know and be able to do? And these are just a couple of the priority standards that we looked at for this unit. So things like writing routinely for a range of tasks and purposes, writing to create, applying basic and advanced literary techniques, exchanging ideas through storytelling, And then creating written, oral, and digital content that communicates knowledge and ideas. So our team started and said, like, okay, if we're going to blow this assessment up and we're just going to start fresh, let's make sure we really understand what we are compelled to teach them. Like, what are the skills that they are going to need to demonstrate? What's the knowledge that they're going to need to have to demonstrate those skills? And just to give you context for where we were, we used to do a number of different summative assessments in this unit. So we would do like a literary analysis essay. We would do teaching presentations where students would teach their peers about the coming of age themes in a text. We might do a Socratic seminar where they have a discussion about the text and the coming of age traits within there and themes. And then a long time ago, we did like a coming of age assessment, and that sort of looked ACT-ish or MCA-ish. It sort of depended on the year, like how we would adjust it. That was our least favorite way to assess coming of age. And so what we said when we met as a team, we said, like, well, what are students actually going to do in the quote real world with these skills? And I hate using that real world because for my students this morning, they're in their real world. Like, this is their real world. But we asked, like, if they're going to be adults in our world who have skills and aptitudes that help them to succeed, what is it that they need from this unit to be those adults that are thriving in our world? So what we did was we asked ourselves, what does it look like to write a coming of age television series or a movie, right, that's coming of age? Because when we show them different examples of coming of age, we watch like an episode of The Wonder Years, which I'll show you kind of how that fits in later. But we said, well, goodness, like coming of age stories are so popular on television. So we said, what if we, in our classroom, transformed our classroom into a writer's studio in which our students would develop a coming of age television series, and then they would pitch it to us and we would act as a showrunner. And so that idea of kind of taking the real world context and bringing it into our classroom was so exciting for us as teachers. Instead of asking, like, how can we AI proof this essay? Instead, we said, like, well, what would this really look like? And how exciting would it be to sort of make that happen for a few weeks in English 9? So we developed an assessment we called the Writer's Room. And actually, when we developed this, the Hollywood writers were on strike. So initially we were like, hey, look, they're on strike. Like, why don't you guys step in? And so what we did was we first taught students about television, like how do shows, how do we generate ideas for shows? What does a writer's room look like? How do you think about the show type, the service and network, the episodes of that series based on the genre? And then all of our exemplars came from the quote real world. So we pulled in storyboards from Disney. We watched all kinds of opening credits from different television series and shows. Part of their assessment was they had to do a little table read where they could either hire actors to do their table read of their script, or they could read the script themselves. So one really exciting part of this for students, like something that's been so engaging, is that every single exemplar is just from Hollywood, from television that they've seen. And we didn't have to create those as teachers. What we had to do was curate those and ask, like, what would be the best examples so that they could produce their own coming of age opening, their storyboard, their script. And so that is part of how we reimagined assessing coming of age. From there, we said, like, well, what are the roles that exist in a television or in a writer's room or a network? And then we asked what tools would they need to use, and kind of what is then the instruction, the boundaries, the bumpers to make sure that they have success. So what we did was we learned more as teachers about what producers do, what a creative or visual director might do. We talked about kind of who might lead the writing in the writer's room. We learned from watching a video about the creation of The Office, about the blue sky period in a writer's room where kind of anything goes. And that really helped them to think about, like, what does it mean to brainstorm and really unleash their creativity? And Our students then also got to choose roles that fit their aptitudes. So we actually give them a survey to learn more about their individual strengths. And then we kind of adjust what roles that we put them in groups, really thinking about balancing those strengths, but they ultimately choose the role that they will fulfill, and they learn a little bit more about that role. From there, we teach them to use the tools that they'll need. They did use Gemini this year as they were creating their pitch, and I'll share with you a little bit about how we nurture their use of that LLM. They use Canva, they use cameras when they're making their trailers, some video editing software. Our students come with a lot of skills, so we try to also let them use the tools that they feel comfortable using, but then stretch them if we think there's a tool that's better fitting for the task, the part of the assignment they're working on. And then in terms of instruction, boundaries, bumpers, we do everything from teaching them about kind of how a writer's room works, to how to write a script, to how to storyboard. And all of that starts with real scripts, real storyboards. And then we teach them about things like the FCC and how they're going to think about what can be included in their television series if they're going to appeal to a broad audience. And as the showrunner, I often tell them, like, if I'm investing in your series, I want to make a return on my money. So I need you to think about making sure your television series reaches that broad audience. So it's really fun. In the unit, I tell them, like, they're no longer students. I'm no longer a teacher. Like, we're in a writer's room for the next 3 weeks. When you think about using like Gemini, for example, with students in this unit, one of the things I began with at the very beginning of the year was to say, you need to know how the brain learns, because there are things that I need you to do independently of without using a tool, because I need you to build the neural network that does that skill, that task. And then there are other times where we're working on building this neural network. So by all means, please use other tools to help you fulfill other parts of that assignment. So we actually started the year by saying, like, how does the brain learn? What are the kind of neural networks you're building? And then how can we use AI skillfully? And then what would unskillful use of AI look like? So we spent a lot of time in the first week or so talking about that. And every unit, we return to how the brain learns, and therefore why we're using AI in a specific way, or any tool in a specific way during that unit. Our technology team and technology cohort developed a responsible use scale. So that has been tremendously helpful, because then I can say, hey, because we value this, we're going to use AI in this way. So this unit is actually on the AI assisted part of the scale. And again, these are 9th graders. So sometimes we're in AI assisted, sometimes we're AI free. And then toward the end of this year, we'll be moving a little bit into AI enhanced. And that's just thinking about like what's developmentally appropriate based on my students, the skills, the content, and then preparing them for the next level. When they're done with this unit, though, I do make them explain what tools they use. So for example, they use Gemini. And they not only tell me, like, why did they use it, they provide artifacts of their use. So some of their chat, some of the things they developed in that chat. And then I ask them, what is the neural network that you're building? And then therefore, what does skillful use of AI look like? And then what is unskillful use? So that they have to kind of articulate for me, like, why their choice of using Gemini to help them brainstorm, I don't know, television episodes for their series is okay, because the neural network they're currently working on building is maybe using a flashback to demonstrate that they can use that advanced literary technique that's in the standards. So it's not perfect. There were certainly hiccups, but many of the conversations I had with students was instead of kind of like, gotcha, or you shouldn't be, they were just saying like, okay, hey, Miss Ivers, I'm working on outlining the script. What does skillful use of AI look like with outlining the script? What would unskillful use be? Instead of this feeling in the past where I think some of our teachers have felt like it's a gotcha moment. Now it's just, they have the language to articulate to me why they're using the tool in that way, and then I can help nurture their use of it. So, and that, it was the scale, it just clicked too. So I'm going to move right along. And this, I just pulled a few of the examples, but like they'll even take professional headshots. I just didn't know if I should include pictures of the kiddos in here, but it's really cute. Like they really try to be as professional as possible when they pitch. So they come up with their production name or company. Some of them like to make it trademarked, like make it look really professional. They develop storyboards. They AI generate images for those storyboards, kind of looking to make sure they have some character consistency. So they're learning all about that as they're navigating using, for that, they use generating images in Canva. But yeah, so then they pitch their series, and at the end, I ask them questions. So I kind of put them on the spot, asking them about their budget, asking them about the audience, and kind of where they see the show going, so that I can consider, like, is this a show that's going to run for 10 seasons or just 3? And at the end, I tell them which one I would fund. So there is a little bit of a competitive nature to the project, which my 9th graders love. Anything with competition right now, they're just eating up. So that's the writer's room. We kind of said we're sick of doing the essay and or a multiple choice exam. Like, how could we envision an assessment that would just be much more meaningful for our students and hopefully build the skills that they're going to need when they move into whatever profession it is, but that will feel more authentic and really build relevance for them. So you might be wondering, like, how did you have maybe the time to reinvent this, or like, what are the logistics? So just for full transparency, our principal gives us, every PLC can take a half or a full release day in each semester just to do some hardy PLC work. So a lot of times we're looking at data or pre-assessments and trying to figure out how we'll change instruction based on that data. But in this season, when we were redoing this, we said, you know what, actually that half day or full day really needs to be for us to think through an assessment like this. And we still meet bi-monthly as a PLC before school on every other Tuesday. And then certainly, like, we take on some of the individual work. I might do one part and my colleague might do another. So this collaboration was done with my partners, Sarah Cole and Tatum Felsed, or now Erickson. And then we ask our curriculum implementation lead to support it. So she might pull exemplars for us, or she might help us make sure that the rubric is really aligned to standards. But we also use Gemini to help us do that as well. And then for this first round, I invited my digital learning specialist, Bailey Nett, in to come and watch the final product and to give me ideas about how I could continue to make this a more meaningful assessment for students. So the rubric is part group and based on those standards you saw at the beginning. And then there is one part of the rubric that is individual. And that's so we can communicate to each individual kind of how they met the demands of their role and how they contributed to the final product. So that is the writer's room. And then Sean, if I'm taking up too much time, will you tell me?
I will let you know. You're doing wonderful. We've got some comments here. Jen is not just a teacher. This is the example of the art and science of teaching, and she is a true professional. So grateful for this amazing leader and her sharing today. And then Jen Hegna just added that we need more just the teachers like Jen. So there you go. You're doing great.
That's very kind. And remember, it's entirely a group effort. Like this. That's the beautiful part of being a teacher. Like, collaboration is so exciting. I learned so much from my colleagues, and we all get to bring like what we're uniquely gifted at, and it just makes the project better for everyone. So this second part of my presentation is really more tied to feedback. So that, I mean, it might be feedback during a formative experience, but certainly during a summative experience as well. And as you might imagine, being an English teacher, closing the feedback loop can be challenging because at the high school level, they produce a lot of writing. And so you're kind of fiercely trying to give them the most meaningful feedback you can during the writing period, or, you know, during that process, and not after the game is over when they've turned in the essay, right? That is the least powerful feedback I give, is at the very end. So we have spent a lot of time here trying to figure out, like, how do we close that feedback loop for our students, and how do we get them the information they need in order to progress in their writing? So going to talk about seeking creative solutions there. So the problem of practice, obviously meaningful, timely feedback with regard to writing. And then also kind of creating customized practice. This is something that like in the past, you might have teachers using, like we used to use vocab.com, or I think our middle school teachers have tried No Red Ink, but creating and generating practice for students can be expensive. It can also be from platforms that aren't always using like maybe what we would consider best practice in the area of teaching grammar or vocabulary. So I'm going to talk about those two problems and how we've brought AI to the table and our specialists to the table to help us in solving those problems. So the first problem we've been working on actually this week, but last year as we were writing one of our literary analysis essays, so this is a traditional assessment. This is one that we didn't blow up and reinvent. We said, nope, the standard does call for students to write a literary analysis essay. So like we need to have them do that. But getting students feedback quickly so that they can progress is really challenging. You're either racing around the classroom or you're bringing a bunch of work home because you're trying to look through drafts when kids aren't in front of you. So when they are in front of you, you can attend to them. And we've come up with some solutions in the past, like using Autocrat. Students would submit their writing to a Google form. We would score it on the Google form super fast or on the spreadsheet, and then we would run Autocrat and it would send feedback back to the students. And that was really powerful and great, but there were some hiccups in that process, like students who are already impacted by executive functioning sometimes struggle then to like get their writing into that Google form so that we can get them timely feedback. So one of the things I've been working on with Paul Ivers, who's our digital learning specialist, is using an app script in order to get their writing from their worksheet to a spreadsheet where we can see it quickly, and then pushing feedback back to that same worksheet. And because AI can help us create app scripts now, like I've been able to make some that are pretty simple, but if you had told me I would be using AI to create an app script 5 years ago, I would have laughed in your face. Like that is crazy to me. It still feels a little like I'm speaking a language that I don't totally know very well. But the trouble as a teacher is if I want to go see their writing, I have to click into every single kid's Schoology document, and then I have to scroll to the part that they want me to look at, and then I'm going to look, and then I have to decide how can I leverage like the best feedback possible in this moment, and avoid giving them like maybe low quality feedback, like where does a comma go? Like I want to use what only I can provide them in that moment for feedback. And so in order to speed up this feedback experience, being able to retrieve we just created a custom menu where now we can pull, and I say Paul very much created this custom menu where it can pull the student information from the cell that we want on the worksheet. So it'll pull everybody's thesis statement, and then I can quickly score it with the rubric that I put into that spreadsheet, and then we'll push that feedback back to their document. And in this way, no matter kind of what experience a student has with their executive functioning, we're not going to see like cumulative disadvantage for the kiddo who is already maybe impacted by executive functioning, because we're just going to remove that friction from the process for them. So this, I think, has a lot of potential. We're still learning. So we're sort of tweaking and figuring out what's the best way to apply an app script to providing feedback. And then how can we create space so that the teacher can continue to give like what is the most important like human feedback, and then helping students use Gemini, for example, in this essay, to get feedback that Gemini can provide, so that I'm not trying to take on the role of being the only provider of feedback. So also kind of teaching and cultivating in them the know-how to use AI in that way and to get thoughtful feedback there, and then to seek me out for the feedback that they know should come from me. And we kind of talk about what feedback should come from Ms. Ivers and what feedback could come from AI. So this is just what that spreadsheet looks like. And I work with 2 other 9th grade teachers. So we collect all of that data on the same spreadsheet, because that way I can see too, like, oh, how is Sarah scoring that thesis statement? Or how is Tatum scoring that evidence integration? So it helps us with our inter-rater reliability, just like norming our grading. students also don't get any points for this, but they submit so much feedback to us, or sorry, writing, because they want feedback. Like, it's so crazy. At the end of the unit, we always look at these spreadsheets, and it's like hundreds of writing samples students have submitted because they want a connection to their teacher. They want the person who's going to score the essay to give them feedback. So that's always really heartening for me, because they're really trying to become better writers, and like no points go in the grade book for this, like none at all. So it's really cool to see them just developing that love of learning and like eagerness to get better. The spreadsheet also makes it possible for us to, in our workspace, Gemini, analyze student writing, ask it, what kind of data or what kind of an analysis could we do with this data to help us progress in our PLC work? So that's been awesome as well. Like, that's just stuff in the past we would never have had time for that. I mean, we would have wanted to, or we might have pulled a high, medium, and low sample and tried to do our very best. But now that we have everyone's samples in this spreadsheet, we can go to AI and say, like, help us navigate, like, where should our instruction be used? How might we tailor it, even in these last few days of this unit, to get them across that finish line, to make them more proficient writers. So kind of a bonus for our PLC work. And then in terms of creating customized practice, we've also generated or made gems. It's not perfect, but we made some gems based on the vocabulary they're learning in this unit, and then based on the grammar concepts. And then we're teaching them how to use those gems in order to help themselves prepare for the essay, right? Because they're going to need to demonstrate their knowledge of grammar and vocabulary on the essay. So as a part of that, we also teach them, like, what do you do when the gem isn't working, and like, how do you navigate that? So that's been a great experience for us to nurture with them. Like, they'll say, Ms. Ivers is just giving me all the answers. And I'm like, well, tell it not to. Like, you're the one who's got to do the learning. So if, like, just direct it. And then they do, and it's fine. So when we use the gems for practice, while the grammar and vocabulary is really important to me, the most important part is it creates a space for me to help nurture how they interact with a gem or how they're interacting with AI, and building up their competency there. And then last, because we have created these gems and they're individual, sometimes as a teacher, I want to have a whole group experience through grammar or a vocabulary set of practice questions. And so I just go to Gemini and I ask it to create an interactive web app. And then I kind of tweak it from there to make sure that it's kind of how I want it to look. Often when I tell it to be more fun, it does something kind of silly. Like, it creates this grammar quest where the kids are knights and they're fighting the grammar dragon, which we usually make fun of with my 9th graders. But anyway, that's been great. And my team, that's as fat, like, it gives the link, I put it on a Google site, and then I share it with my team. So actually just earlier this week, maybe Tuesday, I came into work and I said, they need more practice with pronoun antecedent agreement. And we made one really fast. And then we were all able to use it that day and create a kind of community experience of working through the same problems. So that kind of helps to balance the more individualized practice they get with the gem. So again, just knowing about the collaborative process, I think it might be helpful for you guys as you think about your teachers or your teams. So this work happened kind of between our bi-monthly PLC meetings and then some individual prep time. Like, I do some, Sarah does some, Tatum does some. And then I spent a lot of time with our digital learning specialists when we do things like app scripting, because that's something that, like, I can do, but I can't do as proficiently as our digital learning specialists. So sometimes I just ask, like, hey, would you be able to do it? Or would you show us how? And over time, we've gained skills as teachers to do some of that. But without our digital learning specialists, that work would be harder on our own. And, as a teacher, you're navigating a lot of different demands on your time. So just to be really transparent about, like, the partnership that made this possible. And I think that's it. I'm sorry if that took up too much time.
No, yeah, it was wonderful, Jen. I'm gonna let people applaud you for a little bit here.
Oh.
Donna.
Oh, sorry. I bumped it.
Donna was clapping. She raised her hand though because she wanted to say hi. Wonderful job, Jen. Absolutely wonderful. I will share that Jen is absolutely one of our early adopters, and so jumped in on this stuff early on. One of the hallmarks of what Jen has been doing is that reflective part of the practice, making sure that she's thinking about the purpose of the tools and how it supports student learning. You heard that, throughout this presentation. I put the presentation link in the chat, and like I said, we'll follow up and make sure that you have access to all of these after this as well. Once again, wonderful. Thank you very much, Jen. I've got emails coming in telling me what a great job you're doing. This chat is absolutely amazing. So congratulations on a Friday. Take a little glow. That was awesome.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate being here. And I'm going to take off now because I'm going to go be the mystery reader for my son over at Schumann. But it was great to be here. And if you want anything I've shared, like, I believe in sharing. So just let me know. I left my information there for you.
Jen, thank you so much. That was really, really good. You are not just a teacher. I need you to know that you are amazing. This is really, really great work. And thank you.
Thank you so
Super
much.
grateful.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
That was pretty incredible. Do we want to do this reflection activity, Sean, or do we want to move forward? Are we time-wise doing okay? Let's look here.
Sorry, we're about 15 minutes behind where we normally are at this point, but I think that was well worth the run over. So if we want to skip the reflection part, we can. We'll send it to people as well. I
do wonder if there was anything in the presentation that anyone felt any risk or frustration with, because this is, we're trying to move practitioners into feeling good about utilizing AI to enhance the experience. And a wonder I would have, since we have all these brains in the room, is we saw what was working really well with the approach. And I think we saw a lot of potential. My wonder is, would anyone be able to surface something that was frustrating or risky? And I just say that as a way to, like, this is our reality, is that we are going into this territory not knowing what we don't know. And then, would somebody be able to basically like shoot holes in the idea, right? So that's my question. Go ahead, Dave.
I think it's really easy to highlight something that she had shared was the mentality of, but Miss Ivers, it's giving me the answer. Okay, great. Who needs to be doing the learning, and how do you restructure it so it's not giving you the answer? That focus and that strategy is potentially an area where we can poke holes in this. Not everyone has that intentionality. Not everyone knows how to respond to it. Everyone can say those words and mean those things, though. But the mindset of AI's doing the thinking, you need to be doing the thinking, and we're not just going to turn it off, but we're going to shift how we use it. And that you as the student are responsible for some of that. And that you can do that and empower that as a practitioner mindset. That is not something that is super, super common, I don't think. I think that everyone here may be like, yeah, that was a great strategy. I would do that. But for every one of us, there's 5 that would be like, wait, I can do that? Or is that my role? Or I should be protecting the kids instead. And so I think that that's a piece that we need to continue hearing, acknowledging, and amplifying, that part of this is the holes that could be poked in, but it's really a mindset of use too.
Amanda.
I think adding to off what Dave had said, he was talking about like the restricting. I think something that comes across for us is, districts, including us, have already started limiting use or accessibility to AI. And so if we are going to do that, and we're asking staff members to be intentional in their planning and intentional in the use of it, that restriction access is going to be a potential barrier because not all staff are going to have that capability or desire or know-how in order to set up those features and the safeguards and the intentionality in the instruction. And I think that needs to be a whole system conversation, especially with the limit versus semi-limited or all limited or not limited. And that's something that I think as a district, I know we need to tackle because we're already experiencing issues with, the biggest concern is cheating. So how do we set that up so we can open up opportunities? And that's going to take some very explicit and supported PD for our teachers to then use with their students. And the other maybe barrier specifically with REDACT is the time to provide that. As secondary moves in next year to training, and we look at that middle school, high school realm where a lot of this conversation is taking place, especially from the student aspect, making sure we're intentional in that training time. And I think this group could be a really great resource to talk about those trainings. Like, what do they look like? What is the intentionality? How do we craft it together? Because the more brains we have looking at it, the easier the work could potentially be for us to use it at a district level.
I'm going to call on Jen in just a sec. One of the things that I do want to highlight, though, is she's very mature in her, mature is a weird word. She's very well developed in her approach to AI. And it's one of the things that we've talked about a lot here, being cautious about making sure people have the skill set and the knowledge base to be able to use it effectively without making it look like it's casual experience with AI, right? And so Jen reflects a really well-developed professional. But she also reflects like, this is what we can have if we develop our professionals, right? Like, so much of what she did is professionalism, but that was supported through a few years of, she just engages in it on her own, but a few years of professional development around AI and seeking to provide clarity on what it looks like when we use it in the classroom. Jen.
Yeah, I was just thinking, the opening question about, voice and diversity and like, the thought of being able to take, our standards and bring them to life for a variety of students and capture their voice, I think is really the thing that I'm most excited about. In thinking about authentic assessment, like you can still learn your standards and maybe get a little AI literacy, but the engagement I think is the key here. And I love that this is the first approach that I've seen from an ELA standpoint, because I think that in itself, like having these little snippets and these stories to share that we can take back to our districts and say, hey, here's an example. I think that's what is just exciting. But I do say, I do agree that, some of the technical challenges that, are shared, but I'll be a proponent. Like, you can ask AI to do some amazing things and it will help you build some of those systems. Because I think the feedback loops and everything that was accomplished in that is really amazing. And I'd love to hear a follow-up of how these stories, even within your district, Sean, get started and, do they blossom into or permeate into other subject areas, into other ELA classes? And I love the idea of how she was still using formative assessments, still using quizzes to make sure, I'm not missing the skills while, in the big picture, kids are doing some amazing things utilizing those skills. So I think it's well done, and kudos to teacher Jen, because that was it was fabulous. So yeah, I just think the potential of MNGAIA being able to share these stories and us to be able to take them back to our own districts or entities, institutes, whether it's higher ed or K-12, I think is just, exactly what we need. So kudos.
I'm going to jump in just one last time, because we were looking at our data, of course, as a school district, and Orono is fortunate. We're small. We have an extreme, 99.9% of our kids graduate. I think one kid didn't graduate last year, literally. So we're certainly blessed with the size of our district. There's a hot spot or a high point in our data that's reflected at the 9th grade language arts level. Like the proficiency level for 9th grade language arts is higher than everything else in there. And I just think, you know, causation isn't correlation or whatever that is, but I have a suspicion that part of the reason why kids come out of that experience so proficient is because of the cooperation of this team. So it definitely is a, like Jen pointed out a couple of times, it definitely is a group lift, but it's a really healthy group lift. And one of the things that AI has helped to do is attend to the time challenges that can get in the way of the people relationships, right? And so I've said for a while, when you are able to parse out the PLC data without making it a personal examination of the data, but AI is helping you do that, it enriches the conversation you have at the AI level. Yep, like Paul said, and absolutely, it is the most functional, maybe not the most functional, but it is one of the most functional PLCs that I have experienced. And when we've talked about PLCs for all these years, I'm like, oh, that is what it is. So, okay. All right. Thank you.
Awesome. On that note, on Jen's comment about our own learning and on developing our own comfort with some of this AI, we're going to go into kind of the learning session time for our time together today. Last time, Jen shared some information with all of you on gems and programming gems, and we're going to do a little bit more work this time using some of the learning that we had from her and her great presentation last time, I think. So hopefully we'll get a little more practice, because the idea is we're kind of going slow and intentionally with some of this stuff to bring along our own comfort level as well. And the idea is that, you know, we have lots of teachers that we need to bring along. And so making sure we're trying to meet people where they are is a big deal. So the next slide is on, it's a question. We're going to put a poll in the chat. I'm going to ask Kate to help me get the answers.
Kate, I'm handing it off to you now.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. So am I presenting now? Do I have to present my screen now, Sean?
I think Kate can do it.
Okay.
I think, sorry.
Yeah. Kate, want to present your screen and then you can put the stuff in the poll. So redesigning assessment. I mean, and again, this is the beginning of our conversations around this topic. So for those of you that can, what best describes your current assessment challenge is the question. And we're just asking you to go ahead and put it in the poll.
Kate, I think you have to go back a couple slides.
Yeah.
She's trying to find, she's in tab land. I can tell. Lost in tab land. I've been there. Dual monitors is great until you're trying to do one thing with 3 different Google accounts. And then all of a sudden,
There we go.
Where am I? Am I in the desert right now? Oh, okay. Got you.
Thanks, Kate. So we should all see a poll coming in soon. Or I guess, do you want me to start it? What do you want to do here?
It'll be in 1 minute.
Okay. And so while Kate is helping us out with that, I'm going to just talk about what's on the next slide briefly so we can skip through that quickly. But part of the challenge, right, the shared problem that we all have is this idea of implementing the standards with integrity, designing lessons and units of study that are aligned when we have these resources that often come with many gaps, and a variety of resources to pull from, of which we are never really certain the quality. At times, some of them we are, but so the shared problem we all have is is really aligning all of these pieces, our standards, our lessons, and our assessments, to really know that they're eliciting the evidence we want, and tackling those really highly transferable, enduring skills that we know our kids are going to need. So we thought for today, one thing we could do is just talk about this and practice using a gem and some scenarios. So the poll is out, it looks like, right? And go ahead and just give us your best vote on where you think your current assessment challenges are. And it's okay to say none of these. I'd be curious to know what you think your biggest challenge is, and then just put it in the chat if you don't see one of these. As we move into teacher spaces and working with teams on classroom assessment, it's clear from feedback on surveys that many teachers don't feel well equipped in the classroom assessment space. It's self-reported. And so I think it's interesting to just know that. And when we approach this learning, we do it with a lot of humility, right? Because we're all growing. I'm going to go to the next slide. We have this idea of GEM that I want to introduce today to all of you. And it's, we're calling it GEM as a lens versus the Google GEM. So we're going to do a gem of a gem today. So bear with me. Let me just explain what we're thinking here. We want to take existing lessons and assessments, and we want to interrogate them using AI in a way that is efficient. And we chose this task simply because it's accessible. It should be accessible to most of our teachers. So we programmed a gem, and if you don't have Google, you would do this in whatever platform. Dave, you can tell us what platform Microsoft uses, what tool they would use, but this is something that you could Copilot, right? So you could do what we did last week and program it in Copilot. So we did it in Google because we're a Google district. And the idea is the learning standards core intent. What understanding or skill endures? What is the transferable skill inside the standard that is being addressed in the lesson? Oftentimes that is front work that we do when we unpack standards, but what sometimes happens is that we don't always get to the assessment design matching because it takes so much time. It's a really grueling process if you've ever done it. And when I have sat with teacher teams that have done this work, it takes a long time. We spent one day literally unpacking standards and designing units of study and assessments, and we got through like 2 standards. So the idea that we are asking teachers to do this really grueling work in teams, now mind you, it's multiple teachers doing that work, and the time that it takes is something that I want us to be mindful of and be open to utilizing tools when they come our way to help us do it better. So the goal is the learning standard, understanding the enduring skill. The evidence is getting at what demonstrates and shows transfer or application. What is it we really want the kids to master for their next level of learning, in other words? And then we want to ascertain whether or not our assessment is actually measuring what we are trying to ensure that the kids know and can do for their next level of learning. So we designed this gem. We're using it as a thinking partner. We're using it for sense making, not as a grading engine, for example. We're going to move from just trying to understand, are we covering all the content standards, to really truly what is the evidence of what I would call transfer that we want to see And then we're just surfacing some of the human capacities that we value, like judgment and reasoning and creativity and critical thinking, right? So today we've designed a Google Gem using this gem lens. If you go to the next slide, Kate, this is how we are ensuring that we are keeping humans in the loop too, right? Is that we're asking questions, we're asking the gem, if you will, questions that we haven't considered. We're surfacing assumptions about our assessments. We might ask it, what are the assumptions that are going into this lesson? And maybe there's some assumptions that you hadn't even thought of that are inherently in there, because the AI, believe it or not, right, it's going to pull everything and things you didn't think of. So we're asking the AI to give us output that we can then evaluate. And so we want to always promote a human in the loop in terms of the evaluation of the output of any of these gems that we use. In doing this, if you go to the next slide, we're going to take a look at doing one of these. When I did this, I will tell you that I did it myself first. I literally designed a gem, a goal, evidence, measure. I looked at the gap. I lifted up the low, the redesign. I asked myself, why would I do this? I asked what changes for the student. And I wrote it all out because I wanted to see if the AI would produce something similar to what I produced. And it did, and it actually produced even better results. Okay, so just for the sake of trying this out, and I think I have to share my screen, right? Or can you click on this link and pull it up? Okay.
I have it. I can put it in the chat.
Okay. So the idea is, yeah, so if you look at Donna's test, you'll see the top part of this is just all what I did. And it's so interesting. I did it on a 5-paragraph essay, everybody. So, you don't have to read through any of this and look at it, but it was just a way for me to settle into this work and say, okay, I can see where a teacher might feel a little nervous about trying it, because this is thinking work that they typically do to create. And then if you look below, if you scroll down below it, you'll see the results that the gem gave me. And what we're going to do today is we're going to practice putting in an assessment and a lesson. We've got scenarios. We're going to put you guys into breakout rooms, and you're going to try and use this gem, and it's going to give you output like the bottom half of the Donna test slide. And then you're going to get prompted to reflect on some of the output. Okay, now full transparency, what is programmed in this gem is things that I'm aware of as someone who's worked in assessment and in this field, right? So I asked the gem to be cognizant of things like backwards design and construct validity and different assessment and measurement pieces that we would want our lessons, our assessments, and our standards to all align to. Yes, universal design, correct, Jen. So it won't be perfect, but it was a first stab at trying to do this, to give everyone a sense of like, how can we show our professionals a way into this work that is meaningful and also accelerates our work around authentic assessment, because we don't want to just use AI to reproduce what we're already doing that isn't giving us the evidence of transfer, for example, but showing us that kids are just meeting content standards. Yes, we want them to have content knowledge for sure, and we need to be focusing much more on the skills that they need to be successful at the next level. And those are transferable, enduring human skills. And so let's, from there, I don't know if we can try, if we need to show this. How do I do this? Just click on this, or do you have to click on it, Kate, because you're presenting? Okay, yay. So when you get into your group, you're gonna click on this gem. It's called Gem of a Gem. You're gonna find the scenario details, copy and paste it in here, and then just hit the entry. Yep. And it is going to give you some output in the format of the gem, goals, evidence, measure. You're also going to get to see where the assessment is maybe misaligned based on the scenario that we gave. And then it's going to prompt you to reflect. And our hope is, while these are just scenarios, at some point we would love for school teachers, participants, people who are actually building this out to use this and try it. And wouldn't it be awesome if at the end of the day, MNGAIA had an authenticity gallery of examples of assessments that are really, truly getting after transferable, enduring skills that we know kids will need. The research says if we tackle assessment this way, that we should see significant improvements in performance and achievement, because they can apply to other contexts, right? So why not try? The other thing that we'll want you to do in your groups, and I don't know if we want to first just try this gem, do the reflection, and come back together, and then go back in and do the lifting. What do you think, Kate? Or should we just tell them to do it all in one big, what time is it?
I think we should do it all at once.
I think we should do it all at once. Okay. All right. I'm going to try to make these instructions really clear. Kate's going to help me if I mess up here. You're going to go into a breakout room. You're going to try the Gem of a Gem. If you brought your own lesson and assessment that you wish to examine, by all means, you get to use that. If not, you're going to use the scenario that matches the breakout room that you're in. And then when you get the output, we're going to ask that you just copy and paste the output underneath the scenario. And then our goal will be to take what gets identified as low lift redesign items, those are things that they're small practical shifts that we think we could make tomorrow or next week in our work to make sure that we share back with all of you the synthesis of that. So I think we're going to go ahead and do the breakouts and get going on this. Does anyone have questions? Does this make sense to people? All right. So I think, are we ready then to go ahead and do breakout rooms? Let's do it. So just curious, I think I've looked at some of the scenarios and I am seeing what people put out there, and just curious, what are your thoughts? How did that feel? It was a little overwhelming in my group. Wondering what others thought.
I think Troy Anderson and Elk River. I was with Gary and I can't even remember now. Sorry, I forgot her name. She can shout her out her name. Lindsay, sorry. The initial swing at it, it was a little kind of like a fire hose of information came out of there. And we talked about, if you knew the content well, it may not seem as overwhelming. But as we read through it, like the section that we really zeroed in on was the redesign, like the recommended changes for redesigning. And so if we were like in our PLC team, that might be the part of it that we would really want to dig into. But then we also talked about, right, don't just take it as it is, like reprompt it, like maybe it is too much. Like, all right, I'm looking for 2 or 3 examples. That reprompting part we felt would be an important part of this. But eventually we kind of landed on that redesign section that came out for us. And then we just spent some time talking about, generally speaking, it certainly doesn't shortcut the learning process because there's a lot of critical thinking that needs to go into this. If you're working with your PLC team to synthesize this, break it down and analyze these different sections of it. But I think a part of that would be, you know, giving teachers some question prompts, like as you look at this, what are some potential questions that you might want to ask it to help you better understand it or reprompt it. But it was a great activity. We are planning to do something similar to this in our district in a couple weeks, and I may borrow a few pieces of this idea. So well done. Thank you for putting it together.
Our group also, I actually, so my district is working, or one of my buildings is really working on critical thinking. So it's like very timely. I agree that the output, it outputted 9 pages of content. And so that was a little overwhelming. However, I think it's just a little tweak in the gem design. Mary, you know, had actually put it in and said, hey, we want to summarize the thinking, the gaps, the authenticity, and then the equity. And it put it all in a table. And I was just wondering if that table came first, and then, you know, you could program the gem to, you know, especially if they're wanting to know more about the gaps, like it could potentially output the specific gaps. Kind of a choose your own adventure of like, do you want to go with the thinking, with the gaps, with the equity piece, or get right into the design of the authenticity. I absolutely loved the idea of the pathways to make it more thinking or more authentic. You know, like here's an immediate win right now, and all the way to really transforming. And I wonder, you know, if you wanted to transform, like what that would look like if you could potentially get the gem or prompt it, you know, to create the support resources for that assessment. But I thought it was great. Well done. It's very relevant. And I love that, you know, it's just, we can easily take it, customize it to our own needs. So thank you.
I'm just
We were struck by,
Oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Marcy. You go.
we were struck by just the different responses that came out for the 4 of us. And then figuring out, so what is our expectation that it's replicable? And then what do we do when we get those different responses? And how would a novice teacher respond to that versus an experienced teacher? How do you do this? You know, giving some guidance on this is done. If you do this individually, if you put it in multiple times, you may get different results. And if you do it collaboratively, it's like having multiple brainstorm partners. So just, I went into it thinking we were all going to get the same thing, but we certainly did not.
And that is such a good point, Marcy, because I think it's really important for people to understand that we are dealing with large language models that are going to give us output that we have to evaluate. And it's not like, you know, the old programming where we would program something and we would know it was deterministic, right? That is not the case anymore. And that makes us consumers of this information, evaluators of it as well. And so, but it also gives us access to so much more information than even the 4 of you in that one room could think of, right? It's just, I think of the extension to information that may be helpful, but we as the domain experts need to take that really intentional, critical look at it in order to make it, you know, work for our situation.
All I was going to do is jump on to say, like, I think just to point out too that the benefit of having these experiences where the gem kicks out more information than we want is to experience what does it look like when a gem does these things that we don't want, so that we can learn like how to work with these tools. It's one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot is how do we, this is such a nebulous and such a dynamic world. How can we start to frame up what is learning for us to become fluent as adults in? What does learning look like for our own progression? Like, how do we get to fluency and mastery in the use of AI if we don't know what that means yet? And so I just would offer to, like, I think it's great when we have frustrating experiences with the technology. Not that any of this was frustrating, I just want to say that, but I have created my own frustrating situations when you can do it in a group where you can reflect on that and share on that and take away and learn from that. And one of the goals for MNGAIA is to continue developing the professionals across the state in our own fluency of this. And so I just really think Donna has done such amazing work in this, and I love learning from the whole experience. I think it's great.
And I think going back to those learning goals, that number one learning goal, or a number learning goal, is always to test AI tools and see how they can be, if at all, relevant to your work, to your practice.
I agree with that definitely, because I think that's the thing we have to, think about is like the output, right? And really analyzing what is it that we got, what is it that we received. And then I just love that the fact that anytime we share a gem, like we now have the ability to customize that to ourselves. You can just copy it to your own, and then customize it based on your entity, whether it's, higher ed, wherever. Like you can customize it so that it fits or tailors your district. So that's cool. I love it.
And then I think you look at the potential of this whole meeting then, and you look at a resource like this where we started with Jen Ivers and the incredible work her and her team have done, and you look at this resource and then you think like, well, the AI might not be great, but this is why the human component of it is so great. And if you could bring a tool like this to your teaching team and utilize it, this is how you can say like this work that Jen did is attainable in other groups and teams and schools, because you can use this as a thought partner to help you get to that place. And it had such low floor, high ceiling opportunities for that redesign piece that it didn't have to be this like massive redesign. It was easy to also make it something very entry level obtainable.
Jeremy, I don't know if I'm calling you out, but I wonder if you want to share what your thoughts were, because I thought they were really interesting and good.
I think one of the things when we were focusing in our group on the different pathways, and I asked Donna specifically about this, that she didn't set it up that way, but as we were looking at them, there was the quick win, and to me this sounded like augmentation. Then I went and I looked at kind of the moderate shift, and this sounds more like modification. And then the third pathway was that redefinition part. So it's almost like SAMR's being applied to this assessment activity in a similar way as you would apply it to tech integration, or if you've read Becky Keene's AI Optimism book, applying SAMR to the AI. And to us as we discuss this, it's like, and I think this echoes what Amanda was just saying too, is that, the low floor, the high ceiling of where educators want to enter this transformation that they're trying to make there. It seemed to fit that pretty well, at least in my mind. That's where it kind of connected with me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I was just sharing with Jeremy that I didn't program the gem to think or rely on SAMR as a model, because in my field, what the way we're taught it is through implementation science and de-implementation science. So I was thinking about also what are ways in which we can uncover some of the things we're doing that we ourselves could say, now I'm going to stop doing that and take it off my own plate at the same, at the same time. So anyway, just this collaboration is just wonderful because I learn something new every time and it's just great. So we have 5 minutes, and so the last activity was really around just lifting up some of those redesign ideas that the AI model produced and that our collective wisdom got to kind of weigh in on. And since we didn't have time to do that, one of the things I will commit to doing is looking at the scenario sheets. So if you copy and pasted what you got from the gems into the scenario documents, the Google Docs, I will try and do some sifting of that to find some of what are some low lift redesign items that we can put in what we hope to create is a MNGAIA authenticity gallery. You guys know me, I always have to come up with some idea of what we can call things and create. And then the idea would be that this would be the beginning of it. And as we grow our resources around authentic assessment, we would try to have a gallery that would be open resource to other staff districts that might want to know what's happening in the area of authentic assessment. So I think we're going to skip this part. And then if you go to the next slide, yeah, again, I think that's all I want to do for today. And we have just a few minutes left. So what I will say, if anyone is interested in coming to St. Cloud December 5th, please sign the form that I'm going to send to you after this meeting today. We would love to have you. We have a speaker coming, John Fila, who I will share some information about him in there. You can come and see him. He's got really a lot of really great insight to share. Some of you may know him. That's the last announcement that I have. Does anyone else have anything?
I just want to invite everybody. The MNGAIA group, who's been working over the summer and getting these kicked off, has taken the opportunity to have our practitioners step up and share. We're looking for more, and this is the only reason that you see the hosts that are in the host is because we have been the ones who just decided that we were going to keep showing up. We'd love to have other people host as well, and so when we send out these meeting notes and the video, we'll also send out an opportunity for you to let us know that you either have somebody that this state should hear about, or that you have some concepts or some ideas, concepts is probably the wrong word, that you would love for us to cover and talk about, or that you would be interested in hosting on one of our monthly sessions. So we continue to grow the strength of this group out by inviting you to collaborate.